Hello, good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let us start our discussion today. As someone asked, I will start with the discussion of some aspects of complex logarithm today, so that you get an introduction.
Sir,
Yes,
sir, can you kindly increase your microphone volume?
microphone volume. Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, sir, better.
Sorry. Hello.
Okay, sir.
Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So today we'll start our discussion with the discussion of some aspects of complex logarithm. Uh, so and then we'll go to some other topics we'll discuss. So let me first tell you that we'll use the notation log for the natural logarithm. Okay. One also could use this notation ln, and that is also used by many others. So I'll just use this notation log here. Okay. So we define the complex logarithm as an inverse to the complex exponential function. Okay. The meaning of which is that the logarithm of a complex, non-zero complex number z is any complex number w such that exponential of w is equal to z. Okay, so exponential, complex exponential function we have studied. I had distributed the notes. So we define the function log z by w is equal to log z if exponential w is equal to z. So these are kind of familiar, but we will see some non-trivial features in the context of complex logarithm as we proceed. So we already know that exponential of z plus 2 pi I is equal to exponential of z. So that we know for complex variables. Therefore, if w is equal to log z, so is w plus 2 pi I k for any integer k, right? Because from the fact that this is the property of the exponential function, that is exponential w is equal to exponential w plus 2 pi I k for any integer k. So that means if w is equal to log z, so is w plus 2 pi I k for any integer k. So this tells us that log z is a multiple valued function. Now the imaginary part of the function log z is argument z. We have already know about complex number z. It has a modulus and the argument. Okay. So remember this. We'll come back to this frequently here. So to see that the imaginary part of log z function is argument z, let us write mod z as mod z exponential I argument z as it is written here. Okay. And w is equal to log z, which I write as u plus iv. Okay, the way we have written all the time, a function of z as u plus iv. Now, exponential of u plus iv, if you look at, we get e to the power u times e to the power iv. Okay. And that is equal to, we have e to the power u is mod of z. So rather, let me just write. So this is essentially equal to exponential w is z, because that is the definition of log function. If w equal to log z, then exponential w equal to z. So let us calculate this exponential w. So that is e to the power u e to the power iv, and which is equal to z, that is equal to mod z e to the power I argument z. And if you just compare, then we see that mod z is e to the power u and e to the power I argument z is e to the power iv. Now, since u is a real number and mod z is a positive real number, the first equation for u can be uniquely solved using the real logarithmic function. So u becomes this notation I am using here, log, remember that, capital L, log, log of mod z. So this is a real logarithm because u, as I said, u is a real number and mod z is a positive real number. So notation I am using here for real logarithm is capital L, og, log. In order to distinguish it from the complex log function, which is in my notation is log of z, log, small log. So u is log z, that we can see from here. Similarly, the second equation, e to the power iv equal to e to the power I argument z gives us v equal to argument z, and therefore we can write log z as log of capital log, real log of mod z plus I argument z. So this is the complex logarithm function written in terms of the real logarithm and the argument function in the complex variable z. So you can see easily from here again that the complex logarithm is a multiple valued function because argument z is a multiple valued function. You know that argument z being an angle, it is defined up to an integral multiple of 2 pi, right? So it's modulo 2 pi, you always define the argument. So because argument z is a multiple valued function, complex logarithm is a multiple valued function. Now we know that we can define the principal value of argument z, and you remember the way we define the principal value as a real logarithm of the mod z, modulus of z, plus I times principal value of the argument z, plus of course 2 pi I k for k equal to 0, plus minus 1, plus minus 2, etc. So this explicitly, this is the formula that this way of writing is the one that we will be using many times when we discuss about logs. So this actually manifestly shows that the complex logarithm is a multiple valued function. So you can immediately see that whereas the real logarithm of 1, this number 1 is simply 0, the complex logarithm is of 1 is given by log of 1 as log of mod 1 plus I argument of 1, right? So that is equal to, this is 0, real logarithm of 1 is 0, so that is equal to I 2 pi I k for any integer. So immediately you see the difference here. And not only that, you know that the real logarithm function is only defined for positive real numbers, whereas the complex logarithm is defined for all non-zero complex numbers. For example, if you want to calculate the complex logarithm of minus 1, so using this formula that we have written here, or this one, whatever you prefer. Okay. So what you can write this as real log of mod of minus 1 plus I argument of minus 1. Now if I just write argument of minus 1, so that can be written in terms of the principal value of the argument plus 2 pi I k. So principal value of the argument of mod 1 is, you know, that I pi. So that will give me I pi plus 2 pi k for any integer k. So this is, you see that for complex logarithm, we can also have logarithm of minus 1. Now the complex logarithm obeys many of the algebraic identities that we expect from the real logarithm. For example, the identity that we know that log of z1, z1 and z2 are two complex numbers is equal to log of z1 plus log of z2. We are talking about complex logarithm here. And always, since it is a multiple valued function, we have to remember that this relation holds up to integer multiples of 2 pi I. In other way, we say that it's modulo 2 pi I. And similarly, uh, we can write it in this way, that log of z1 z2 minus log of z1 minus log of z2 equal to 2 pi I k for some integer k. Okay, so these are some properties of the complex logarithm which are coming because this is a multiple valued function. Similarly, we can also have log of z1 by z2 equal to log of z1 minus log of z2 in the same sense as before for any two non-zero complex numbers z1 and z2. So now as we discussed about the argument function and its principal value of the argument function, similarly we'll also discuss, since logarithm is also a multiple valued function and it is coming essentially because the argument function is multiple valued. So we'll also discuss the multiple valuedness of the logarithm function. So first, in some more detail, of course. So first, let us now discuss the analyticity property. We have already discussed in the last class the derivatives and analytic functions and all these things, functions. So let us now discuss the analyticity properties of the complex logarithm function, and for this we need to take its derivative at some point z0. Okay, as we discussed in the last class, definition of the derivative, you remember that. So this log prime here, by log prime I mean this f prime, which is this derivative of log z. So let us discuss this analyticity property. We take the derivative at some point z0, which is defined as log prime z0 is limit delta z tending to 0 log of z0 plus delta z minus log of z0 divided by delta z. Now, as soon as we define, we immediately encounter a problem in doing this. Okay. And let me tell you what is that problem. So this is because the function log z, the complex logarithm of z, is multiple valued. So we have to first of all make sure that the two log functions in the numerator, okay, these two log functions which are there in the numerator, tend to the same value in the limit, okay, because it's a multiple valued function. In the limit, they should tend to the same value, otherwise the limit will not exist. So that is the problem that we encounter as soon as we define the derivative of the log function. So in other words, we have to choose one of the infinitely many values for the log function in a consistent way, okay, so that in the limit, both the log functions in the numerator tend to the same value. So this way of restricting the values of a multiple valued function to make it single valued in some region. So in the example that we are giving in some neighborhood of z0, because z0 is the point in the complex plane where we are taking the derivative, is called choosing a branch of the function. Okay, so when we say that we choose a branch of the function, log function, what we mean is that the restricting the values of a multiple value function to make it single valued in some region. It's not only true for logarithmic function, but any multiple value function that you can encounter. For example, we define the principal branch, again use the notation capital LOG of the logarithm function to be log z equal to log of mod z. This is a real logarithm. Mod z is a positive real number, plus principal value of the argument, which is denoted by capital ARG. For ARG, capital ARG z is the principal value of argument z, small ARG z. Now, just note that although we are using the same notation, capital LOG for both for real logarithm and the principal branch of the complex logarithm, the notation is of course consistent, and you can easily see that if z is a positive real number, then argument z is equal to 0, you know that, if it is along the positive real axis. And because of that, capital log of the principal value of the log function of z, that is equal to log of mod z. So the notation is somewhat quite consistent. So I'm just using this notation. The principal branch is denoted by capital LOG, okay, of the logarithm. Real logarithm is also denoted by capital LOG. Now the function, the principal branch log z, a capital L Z, is single valued, but you can immediately see that it is not continuous in the whole complex plane. Since we know that the principal branch of argument z is not continuous in the whole complex plane. So let us see how it goes. So let us consider these points z plus equal to minus x plus I epsilon and z minus equal to minus x minus I epsilon, where epsilon, x and epsilon are positive numbers, okay? Positive real numbers. Okay. Now, so that means what? It is essentially along the, you are taking some points, okay, which is just above and below the negative real axis. You are taking point z plus and z minus, okay. Now in the limit epsilon tending to 0, z plus and z minus tend to the same point on the negative real axis. From z plus is minus x plus I epsilon, so it tend to the negative real axis from the upper half plane, and z minus is minus x plus minus I epsilon, so it tend to the negative real axis from the lower half plane. Okay. However, the limit epsilon tending to z plus minus, so that means the limit epsilon tending to z plus minus is equal to minus x. However, the principal value of the logarithm in the limit epsilon tending to 0, the principal value here, this log of z plus minus, what is that? That is log of x plus minus I pi, because that is the principal value of the argument. So that is the way we define the principal value. So we see that in the limit, when epsilon tending to 0, z plus minus goes to minus x, the principal value of the logarithm goes to log x plus minus I pi. So you can see, so that this principal value of the log is not a continuous function anywhere on the negative real axis or at the origin, where the function itself is not defined. The log function, from the definition that I gave in the beginning, you see that it's not defined at the origin. Okay. And you can see that it's not a continuous function anywhere on the negative real axis, because across the negative real axis there is a discontinuity. It's plus minus I pi, the principal value of the logarithm. So this non-positive real axis, which is shown here, okay, in this graph here, in this plot here, the non-positive real axis is known as a branch cut for the log function, or the principal value of the log function, and the origin is known as a branch point. Okay. So you can see that this is the branch point and this is the branch cut of the this function. Now, so once you know that, let us denote the D. Let us denote by D all the points in the complex plane, except for those which are real and non-positive. Okay. So you consider all the points in the complex plane except for those which are real and non-positive. So this is branch cut and the entire branch point and the entire branch cut. So in other words, D is the complement of the non-positive real axis. Okay, so D is essentially the complement of the non-positive real axis. And we know that D is an open subset of the complex plane, and by construction, the way we have considered D, log Z is single valued and continuous for all points in D, because the discontinuity was along this non-positive real, across this non-positive real axis. So in D, which is the complement of the non-positive real axis, we have the principal value of the log function, log Z, is single valued and continuous for all points in D. So once it is decided, it is by construction that principal value of the log Z is single valued and continuous for all points in D. We are now ready to define the derivative of the log function for the principal value. So let us consider Z0 in D, be any point in D, and consider W0 equal to log Z0 as is. And let us consider delta Z, capital delta Z, This is equal to z minus z0. Now the derivative of w equal to log z at z0 can be written as, using the definition of the derivative, log prime z0 at z0 equal to limit z tending to z0 w minus w0. W is log z, w0 is log of z0, w minus w0 divided by delta z, which is z minus z0, which can be written as limit z tending to z0 1 over z minus z0 by w minus w0, like that. This can be written. And this can also be written as limit w tending to w0 1 over z minus z0 by w minus w0. And why is that? This is because, as I mentioned, so d
Excuse
in
me,
d,
sir.
the log
I
z
have
is
a doubt.
continuous. Okay, it's a single valued and continuous function. So if it is, yes, sorry,
Sir, I
yes,
have a doubt. May I say?
hello,
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
yes, please
Okay.
go ahead.
Sir, why are you taking the non-positive real axis
Yes,
as
yes,
branch?
please. Non-positive real axis
The branch cut point.
as branch cut.
The branch cut, yeah.
Yes,
Right.
as I showed here, I discussed across the non-positive real axis, we have the log function. The principal value of the log function is not a continuous function anywhere on the negative real axis, and at the origin, it is not. The function is itself is not defined. Okay, so that is why we are considering non-positive real axis as the branch cut. Okay. So it is function is not continuous here anywhere on the negative real axis. So you cannot define, if the function is not continuous, you cannot define the derivative. Okay, and that is the reason we are using the complement of the non-positive real axis, where the function is single valued and continuous for all points in D, and then we are ready to define the derivative in this region D. Okay, and now we define the derivative. And the basic definition of derivative, limit z tending to z0 w minus w0 by z minus z0, and then limit z tending to z0 1 over z minus z0 by w minus w0. And this can also be shown as limit w tending to w0 1 over z minus z0 by w minus w0. And this is because in D, this principal value of the log function is continuous. Okay. So use the continuity of the principal value of log z in D, which means that as z tending to z0, w should tend to w0, because that is the definition of the continuity that we have learned already. And also remember that w equal to log z implies exponential w equal to z, and the exponential function is single valued, of course. Okay. So this is the reason we can use it, that in the limit z tending to z0, w also tending to w0. So we just can take this. Okay. Now using z equal to e to the power w, because w is log z, so z equal to e to the power w, you see that the derivative of the principal value of the log function at z0, which is the point in D, is limit w tending to w0 1 over so this was, remember, z minus z0 by w minus w. So z is e to the power w. So e to the power w minus e to the power w0 divided by w minus w0. And in the limit w tending to w0, this is essentially derivative of the exponential function, exponential prime w0. And we have already studied the exponential function. So it is essentially exponential w0. So 1 over exponential w0, which means 1 over z0. So you see that the derivative of the log function in the complement of the non-positive real axis, where it is single valued, principal value of the log function is single valued and continuous, we can find the derivative, which is log of z0 1 over log prime z0 is 1 over z0. Now, since this is of course well defined everywhere, but for z0 equal to 0, but we know that we have already included excluded z0 equal to 0 from our region D, because z0 equal to 0 does not belong to D. We see that principal value of the log z is analytic in D. So this is the way you can define the principal value of the log function and the branch cut, branch point and the branch cut, and the derivative in the region where it is single valued and continuous. Now, of course, probably Rupsha was, I don't know, it was Rupsha, right, who asked the question?
Yes, sir.
So, you were trying to ask why we consider negative real axis as the branch cut. We could have probably chosen other direction as the branch cut. So, actually, we can choose a different branch for the argument function. You can actually consider the argument function which I denote as, so principal value of the argument function is defined as capital ARG. I just use a different notation here, ARG 0, okay, Z. So that is the branch of the argument function which is between 0 and 2 pi. Okay. So this is another choice people use frequently. This function is also like argument Z is single valued but discontinuous. But in the case of principal value of the argument function, we discussed that the discontinuity is along the negative real axis. But now we can easily check that the discontinuity is now along the positive real axis because its argument function arg 0 is between 0 and 2 pi. So for this, actually the positive real axis is the place where it is discontinuous, this argument 0. Now, since approaching a positive real number from the upper half plane, you would see that its argument tends to 0, whereas approaching it from the lower half plane, the argument would tend to 2 pi. So you can therefore define a branch log 0. I use a different notation here now. Log 0 z of the logarithm by log 0 z equal to log of, this is a real logarithm, log of mod z plus I arg 0 of z, where the arg 0 we have already defined, it's between 0 and 2 pi. So just look at this figure now here. Okay, so this is our the figure where the discontinuity of the argument function along this. So discontinuity of the log function log 0 that I have defined here is also along this positive real axis. And as I said, this branch has a branch cut along the non-negative real axis, but it is continuous in its complement d0 as shown in the figure. So now the complement we define as d0, and there it is continuous and single. So except for this non-negative real axis, everywhere it is continuous and single. So this is the log 0 function that I use. So these are yes.
Sir, a clarification.
Yes.
When it's our choice that we'll take the principal value either from pi to minus pi or between 0 to 2 pi, and on basis of that our branch cut line will be different.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Absolutely. So branch cut will be different. Accordingly, you define this either principal value of the log function, which is defined as log of z, capital LOG, this log of z here. Where is that? Yes, here, LOG. Or you define as log 0 z. I'll discuss more on this. It will be soon clear what I mean exactly. Okay, so this, depending on what branch of the argument function you choose, your branch of the logarithm function will accordingly change. So these are two popular choices that I mentioned, but it can be any arbitrary direction. Okay. So, for example, no, before that, let me just mention. So the same argument for the derivative again goes. So, log 0 z is analytic in d0, which is the complement. Okay, so d0 is the complement here. With derivative given by log prime z0 is 1 over z0 for all z0 and d0. So what we are doing essentially, just remember that you have to, because log z has this discontinuity, multivaluedness, etc. So in order to define the derivative, you have to first choose a branch, okay, of the log function. Okay, so appropriately you have identified the branch cut and the branch point, and then choose a branch where it is single valued and continuous, and then you can define the derivative, and then as I showed, you can define log prime, which is 1 over z. But arbitrarily, you cannot do it. We will see some example and you will understand that. But arbitrarily, you cannot just define derivative and start taking derivative of the log function. Remember that. So you have to look at the point where you are supposed to take the derivative, whether it falls on the branch point or branch cut or whatever, and accordingly you have to choose your branch, etc., and then you can take the derivative. So this is the idea of the entire discussion. Okay. So we showed two branches of the logarithm function, but there are also many other branches. Okay. So for example, let tau be any real number and define the branch, and this branch now I define as capital ARG suffix tau z, okay, of the argument function to take value. So it takes value from tau to tau plus 2 pi. So you just take a look at this. So this is our tau direction. Okay. It takes value from tau to tau plus 2 pi. Okay. So argument function. So this is the way I define the arg tau. It takes value in this range. And this gives rise to a branch log tau of the logarithm function. Okay. Defined by, it should be actually capital L. Okay. So log tau z equal to log of mod z as before, plus I argument tau z, okay, which has a branch cut starting from the origin and consisting of all those points with point z with argument j is tau modulo 2 pi. Of course, argument is defined modulo 2 pi. So this is now the branch cut. Okay. So this is your branch cut, and this is the branch point, of course. So log tau z is analytic everywhere on the complement d tau. So log z is everywhere on the complement d tau, okay, except for this line starting from the origin that I have shown. And of the one as shown, and its derivative is again log tau prime z0 is 1 over z0 for all z0 in d tau. Okay. So depending on your choice of the branch, you appropriately define the log prime and you define what is your branch cut, etc., and then only you define the derivative of the log. So this is the essence of this entire discussion that I wanted to mention. Now remember that choice of branch is immaterial for any properties of the complex logarithm, although it is important that a choice be made. That's what I was trying to emphasize earlier, that you have to make a choice, because that is important, but it's immaterial for many properties of the complex logarithm, not always, of course. So different applications may require choosing one branch over another. Provided one is consistent, this should not cause any problem. So you have to consistently choose in your application which branch you want to take. Most of the cases of the complex logarithm, properties of the complex logarithm, it is immaterial that which branch you choose. But of course, you have to say that you choose, make a choice. But in some cases, you have to choose one branch over other, and consistently you have to do this so that it doesn't cause any problem. So let us just take a example. As an example, let us compute the derivative of the function fz, which is log of z square plus 2iz plus 2 at the point z equal to I. So we want to take the derivative of this thing. Okay. Now you see that at z equal to I, okay, this quantity in the parenthesis, this is what? This is I square plus 2I times I plus 2, so which is minus 2 plus 2 minus 1. So this is minus 1. So you have to essentially calculate when you at z equal to I, when you calculate this function actually. So this function is not analytic, right? Not defined there. Okay, because you know log of minus 1, if you just choose the principal branch of the logarithm, the negative, along the negative axis there is a discontinuity. It is not, it is discontinuous. Log function is discontinuous. So you have to choose a branch of the logarithm which is analytic in a region containing a neighborhood of the point minus 1. Okay. You have to choose as I said, the principal branch is not analytic because minus 1, it's along the negative real axis. So the principal branch is not analytic there. So you have to choose another branch. So let us choose the branch, this log 0. Remember that is between 0 and argument function is between 0 and 2 pi. And then you can easily calculate the derivative here. So this is by the chain rule. You can calculate f prime at I. Okay. is 2z plus 2i from here divided by z square plus 2yz plus 2 at z equal to I. So that gives us 2i plus 2i at z equal to I plus I square plus 2i square plus 2, so which gives us minus 4i. So any other valid branch, of course not the principal branch, because the principal branch is not analytic at this point. So any other valid branch would give the same result. So this is the essence actually, that's what I mean. That you arbitrarily just cannot take the derivative, use the chain rule, and you have to declare which branch you choose, because you know that depending on your point, branch you have to choose so that the function is analytic at that, in the neighborhood of that point, some point. Okay. So this was essentially the idea. There are many more discussions on complex logarithm that one has to do, but I restrict now my discussion here, and we'll go to discussion of complex integration. But before that, let me tell you that another important topic is complex power. So power of a complex number, real or complex, whatever. And that is very important because that you'll have to use in many cases for complex integration. Okay, so you have to know actually what it means when you talk about complex powers, the powers of complex number, maybe real or complex power. Okay. Now this I'll give you as a homework. I'll distribute the lecture notes and you have to go. It's very brief discussion, not much, but the essential points are all there. Go through it. Some examples are also shown there along with explicit diagrams, etc. So just go through it, and then if there is any homework problem, just solve it for yourself. No need to submit. If you want, you can show it to me whether the result is correct or not to check. And if you are confident, then just leave it. And if you wish, I can send you the solutions also later. So complex power, remember, I will distribute the notes after today's class. And so let me just stop, because other properties of the log function, its Riemann surface, etc. These are a little bit more advanced topic, and let me not discuss it here. But this was the basic thing that one should know when you talk about the complex logarithm function. Now let me switch to the discussion of complex integration, because this is another important topic and it has several applications in physics problems. So let us discuss it as much as possible in the short time. Okay. And whenever I find it's not possible, we'll just distribute you notes for your reading, and I am always available for discussion if you have any problem. But since most of you have done some amount of complex analysis, I guess there should not be any problem. But let us now continue. So in real analysis, differentiation and integration, you know that they are roughly speaking inverse operation, right? So we'll see that in the case of complex integration, something similar also happens in the complex domain. But in addition, and this is unique to complex analytic functions, remember, we discussed about analytic functions yesterday. The differentiation and integration are also roughly equivalent operations, and we mentioned about it yesterday. So we'll see later on what I mean by this. So, but in the sense that we will be able to take derivatives by performing integrals. Okay, so in that sense, it is unique to complex analytic function that differentiation and integration are also roughly equivalent operations. So remember that. So we'll be able to take derivative for complex analytic function by performing integrals. So that is unique to complex analytic functions. Now let us discuss the integration of complex valued functions of a complex variable. I'll start from there. Actually, you could have chosen complex valued function of a real variable also, but let us just start from here. So let us consider the integration of complex valued functions of a complex variable z. So we want to perform an integration of the type fz dz. Okay, if z is a function of complex variable z, fz dz, integration z0 to z1, where z0 and z1 are complex number in the complex plane. Okay, so we want to perform an integration of this type. But as soon as we start, we immediately face a difficulty here. And let me explain what is this difficulty. So unlike the case of an interval, AB on the real line where it is obvious how to go from A to B. You are doing it in the real line for real analysis. Here Z0 and Z1 are points in the complex plane. Okay, so you are considering the complex plane. And there are many ways to go from one point to the other. So you can go from Z0 to Z1 along different route. And because of that, the above integral is actually ambiguous. We don't know if you take one route, what will be the result of the integration. If you take a different route, what will be the result of the integration. So first of all, the way out is to specify a path joining these 2 points Z0 and Z1 and then integrate the function along that path. Okay, so this is the first thing that we have to notice. So because of that, let us try to get some idea about the path that we'll be discussing, we'll be using, path joining these 2 points Z0 and Z1. So this brings us the discussion of parametrized curve. So let us consider 2 points Z0 and Z1 in the complex plane. So a parametrized curve joining Z0 and Z1, which is shown here, can be defined by a continuous function Zt. Okay, t is a real variable. Okay, taking points t in the interval t0 and t1, okay, the closed interval, to points zt in the complex plane in such a way that z at t0 I denote it as z0 and z at t1 equal to z1. So this is a parameterized curve joining z0 and z1 in the complex plane. So this is remember it's a continuous function zt taking points t, which is real, in the interval t0 and t1, closed interval t0 and t1, the points zt in the complex plane in such a way that zt0 is z0 and these are the boundary points zt1 equal to z1. Endpoints, I'm sorry. So we can decompose z into its real and imaginary parts, and this is equivalent to 2 continuous real valued function. One is xt and other is yt. So you can write zt as xt plus iyt. So this, as I said, if we decompose into z into real and imaginary parts, this is equivalent to 2 continuous real valued function xt and yt defined on the interval t0 and t1 such that xt0 equal to x0 and xt1 equal to x1. Similarly, for yt, we have yt0 equal to y0 and yt1 equal to y1, where, as I mentioned already, z0 is x0 plus iy0 and z1 equal to x1 plus iy1. So we say that the curve is smooth if this derivative with respect to t of this zt, so z dot t equal to dzt by dt, is a continuous function which is taking values in the domain t0 and t1, this closed interval, and taking it to this into the complex plane C, and which is never zero. Remember that. We say that the curve is smooth if this quantity is a continuous function which is never zero. So in other words, if xt and yt are real functions of the real variable t, assumed continuous in this range between t0 and t1, the parametric equation zt equal to xt plus iyt, t is between t0 and t1, defines a continuous curve or arc in the z plane joining the points z0, which is z at t0, and z1, which is z1 at z at t1. Sorry, z1, which is z at t1. So let us, for example, take this parameterized curve zt equal to cos t plus I sin t. So where t is between 0 and pi by 2. Okay. And this, you can easily see that this will give you this curve, which is this. Okay. So this will give you a curve, which is this cos t plus I sin t. Okay. Now just verify and tell me that this way of parameterization of this curve, the same curve, okay, is also can be written in this fashion: 1 minus t square by 1 plus t square plus I times twice t by 1 plus t square at t goes from 0 to 1. Do you see that these two parameterizations, they are giving the same curve?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you see that this is the two different. These are two different ways of parameterizing the same curve with different values of t, and of course, integration along this curve will not depend on the way you parameterize. This comes from the fact, the thing called reparameterization invariance. Okay, I'll not probably discuss it in detail, but the thing is that if you just use two different parameterization for the same curve, integration will not depend on that essentially. So because of that, you can always choose your parameters in the range between 0 and 1. Okay, so that is always possible. So I'll not go into the details of this. Let me see if I can. I'll discuss it in detail later maybe. Okay, so just this is an example of two parameterized curve, which gives us the curve like this. Now these curves have certain specific properties. Number one, for a particular value of t of zt, but for a particular value of t, so zt has a unique value, that is zt prime equal to zt double prime, then t, if zt prime equal to zt double prime, then t equal to t prime. Okay. So you can see it from here, which implies that the curve is so-called simple curve. Okay, so a simple curve, by simple curve we mean that the curve, a simple curve never crosses itself. Okay. So that's what you mean when you say that for a particular value of t, zt has a unique value. Okay. That is, if zt prime equal to zt double prime, then t equal to t prime. And as I mentioned earlier, the curves are smooth differentiable curves. Okay. So this zt, where t is between t0 and t1, implies that this represents a part of the curve zt in the interval t0 and t1. So as given in this example, this is a part of the curve in this interval shown here. Now if t0 not equal to t1, the two endpoints actually, t0 and t1 are shown here. If t0 is not equal to t1, while zt0 equal to zt1, that is z0 equal to z1, that is the two endpoints of the endpoints coincide. Okay, then the curve is said to be a closed curve. So a closed curve which does not intersect itself anywhere except for the two endpoints, of course, anywhere, is called a simple closed curve. So this is what we mean by simple closed curve. So it's a simple closed curve, for example. And a curve which is composed of a finite number of smooth arcs is called a piecewise or sectionally smooth curve or a contour. Now, a curve which crosses itself, okay, like this, for example, this famous 8 curve. This is not actually simple closed curve that I mentioned. So it intersects here. So this is actually not a simple closed curve. So these are some examples. We will come back to all these things again and again. So let us go into the discussion of complex integration in some more detail. So let us with the parameterized discussion of parameterized curve that I presented. Remember that you have to do this integration along the curve. Okay, smooth differentiable curve. Okay. Now let us consider fz be a complex valued function of the complex variable z, okay, equal to x plus iy. And let us consider a smooth curve C. I use the notation C in the sometimes I will use some other notation maybe. Now, right now I am using C in the complex way. And let fz be continuous at all points of C, and let us assume C has a finite length. And C has endpoints. I denote them by A and B. So I'll show you the graph, the figure. It will be clear what I mean. So let us assume that the C is described by a parametric equation zt equal to xt plus iyt, where t takes values in the interval ta and tb. So t is a real parameter and xt, yt are real single valued functions that have continuous derivatives. So this is what we are considering. And once we have this setup, let us subdivide C into n parts. Okay, by introducing n plus 1 points on the curve, z0, z1, z2, etc., n minus 1, zn. We choose them arbitrarily, okay, as we will see in the next figure, and we assume that the endpoints z0 equal to a and zn equal to b. So this is what we consider. So this is essentially that I meant. So this is the curve C. So this C curve is here, the differentiable smooth curve. And we consider all these points arbitrarily z1, z2, zk plus 1, zk, zn minus 1, and zn equal to b and z0 equal to a, like that. And on each arc joining zk minus 1 to zk, so on each arc like this, zk minus 1 to zk, where k goes from 1 to n. Okay, so k goes from 1 to etc. up to n. We choose a point xi k. Okay, again arbitrarily we choose this point xi k, and we form the sum Sn, which is equal to f of xi1 times z1 minus a plus f of xi2 z2 minus z1 plus f of xi n b minus zn minus 1, so like that. And we just assume that zk minus 1 equal to delta of zk. Okay. So therefore the sum Sn can be written like this, that Sn equal to sum over k equal to 1 to n f of xi k delta zk. So we just form this sum. We have a function f of the complex variable, and we consider this smooth differentiable curve, which is finite length, which is called C. Now we take the limit n tending to infinity in such a way that the largest of the coordinates delta zk, mod of that, tending to 0. Now this limit, provided it exists and provided it does not depend on the way we have chosen z's and xi's, we have chosen them randomly here. Okay. So it, provided the limit exists and it does not depend on the way you have chosen these points, is called the complex line integral of fz along the curve C. And it is written as fz dz c, I equal to fz dz c, or I equal to a to b fz dz. And if this limit exists, we say that the fz is integrable along C, and this is also called contour integral. Now separating fz and z into the real and imaginary parts. So fz can be written as u plus iv, and z can be written as x plus iy. So we can actually expand this sum using separating it into real and imaginary component, and then it can be written as Sn can be written as k equal to 1 to n u xi k x k minus x k minus 1 minus b xi k yk minus yk minus 1 plus I times b xi k xk minus 1 plus u xi k yk minus yk. It's just simple. Just write fz as u plus iv and z as x plus iy and use it in the sum and just expand. You will get this. Now delta zk, mod delta zk tending to 0, meaning mod of xk minus xk1 k minus 1 tending to 0 and yk minus 1 tending to 0 for all k. Therefore, I can be expressed as integration along C. This I can be integral along C u dx minus v dy. So you can see it from here. So u dx minus v dy plus I times integration along C v dx plus u dy. Now let us assume for definiteness that t increases from an initial value Ta to a final value Tb as we go along C from A to B. We can write this I as integration from Ta to Tb u dx dt minus v dy dt plus I integration Ta to Tb v dx dt plus u dy dt. And since we know that z equal to x plus iy, so dz dt equal to dx dt plus I dy dt, we can write this I equal to Ta to Tb u dx dt plus I dx dt. You can write it as u plus iv, and then if you just combine, you can write it as u plus iv times dx dt plus I dy dt. So that is equal to u plus iv is f of z. So this is f of zt and dzt dt times dt. So this way we can write it. And you remember when you do this, I said that when you take this parameterized curve, these dz dt are also smooth functions, differentiable functions of t. So, and it's never zero. So this is the way we define the integration of fz along a parameterized curve from integrated along the curve from ta to t, or rather z to z. So in terms of the parameters, we can write it like this. Note that we have assumed that fz is continuous and c is a smooth curve. Therefore, the integrand is itself continuous and the integral exists. Okay, so that's what we have assumed. Now assume that in a region of the complex plane which includes the contour C, that the function fz can be expressed as the derivative of another function capital Fz. So this is an assumption that I am making here. So suppose fz can be written as the derivative of another function capital Fz, so fz is dfz dz. Immediately notice that fz is therefore analytic in that region, because since the derivative of fz exists, okay, in that region, so we say that the function is fz is analytic in that region. But then for a z situated on the contour, for a point situated on the contour, you can write fz dz dt as dfz dz, because the fz is dfz dz times dz dt. So that is equal to d dt of f of zt. So that means this integration c along the contour fz dz, this can be written as integration ta to tb d of f of zt by dt times dt, and which immediately gives us this. Remember that this zt0 equal to a and zt1 is ta equal to a and ztb equal to b. So this immediately gives us this quantity fb minus f. So you see that this integral, if a function exists whose derivative is equal to the function which we are integrating, then we can see the integration along this path is equal to the difference of the value of the function in the two endpoints, difference of the value of the function in the two endpoints. So this we have seen also in the case of real integrals. So this essentially forms the content of the so-called fundamental theorem of integral calculus. However, remember, notice one thing, that not for all functions you will have this kind of a function whose derivative is equal to the function itself. In the complex plane, you will not get. Okay. And we will see later that only for the analytic function this is possible. Okay. In a simply connected region, I will discuss all these things later. And then this path independence of the integration, that means, by which I mean that integration depending only on the two endpoints, okay, will exist. But in general, you cannot write the complex function as the derivative of a, this is called the primitive function, this is the derivative of the primitive function. Okay. And if you cannot do that, then in general the result of the integration will depend on the paths. So that is one important property that we encounter here. And you will see some other very remarkable, interesting properties of the complex integration as we go along. But we will discuss all these examples of analytic function and this primitive function, etc. later on, not today. But today I will conclude with two simple examples of this complex integration. Okay. So let us just do this integration, the complex function I give you here. Don't look at what I have done here. Okay, you just do it independently. Fz equal to x square plus iy square. And I integrate along the smooth curve given here, zt equal to t plus it. Just write it down and just do have you written down fz equal to, the function is fz equal to x square plus iy square, and the curve is zt equal to t plus it. Okay, for region t less than equal to 0, greater than equal to 0, less than equal to 1. So So what is the function that we have taken? We have taken fz equal to x square plus I y square integrated along the smooth curve parameterized by zt equal to t plus it for t between 0 and 1. Now using the formula that we discussed derived here, okay, so that integration is given by this from TA to T. We just use this fzt dzt dt times dt. You just calculate, evaluate this integral along the curve, okay, and also show the curve along which curve you are doing. Tell me, and tell me the result of the integration. Use this formula. The function is fz equal to x square plus I y square, and the curve along which you have to integrate is zt equal to t plus it for t between 0 and 1.
Sir, I think it is 2I by 3.
Who is this?
Sir, Lavoni.
Lavoni. Correct. Answer is correct. Everybody got this answer? Take your time. Do it. If there is any problem, just let
Yes,
me
I
know.
got it.
Got it? Everybody, let me
Sir,
read
2i by 3, yes.
2I by 3, right? You are getting it. So let me just show you what we have done. So what we have done here. So first of all, you know that t plus it is the straight line segment joining the origin, because t equal to 0, it is 0, and t equal to 1, it is 1 plus I. So this is the straight line segment joining the origin and the point 1 plus I as shown in the figure below. So it's this straight line segment. Along this I have to integrate. And we decompose t as zt equal to xt plus I yt. And we immediately see that since zt is given by t plus it, we see that xt equal to yt equal to t. So therefore, we see that f of z is given by x square plus I y square. So xt is equal to yt equal to t, so it is t square plus it square fzt. And z dot t is, from here we can see that it is 1 plus I. So the integration is given by, f of zt dzt dt times dt. So t square plus it square times 1 plus I dt, and just use the linearity property of the integration. And then what you get here, t square is common, and then 1 plus I whole square t square dt, and that gives you this 2i t cube by 3, 0 to 1, it's 2i by 3. So this is what that you get. Wonderful. Now let us take another example, and that will be the final example of today's class, and then we will stop. And then from here we will start on Friday. So let us take another example. It is to consider the function fz equal to 1 over z. So we take the smooth curve C, which is parameterized by zt equal to, you are writing down?
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you say once more? I missed it.
Yes, the function is fz equal to 1 over z, 1 by z. And it is integrated along the smooth curve C, okay, capital C, parameterized by zt equal to capital R exponential of I times twice pi t z equal to capital R exponential of I times twice pi t for t between 0 and 1, for t between 0 and 1, and where capital R is not equal to 0.
Sir, can you repeat the expression for ZT?
Yes, zt equal to capital R exponential capital R, then write exp exponential within the bracket exponential. The argument of the exponential is I times 2 pi t. T is the small t. Okay.
Okay, sir.
For t between 0 and 1. For t between 0 and 1.
Okay, sir.
Where capital R is not equal to 0. Okay.
Sir, it is 1.
What is 1?
The answer.
Integration.
Yes, sir.
Result of the. No, I'll come to that. But before that, I have told you. So before that, first of all, tell me what is the curve along which you are integrating?
It's a circle.
It's a circle. It's a circle. Centered about
Origin.
radius
Capital R.
capital. So it's a circle centered about the origin, and radius capital R. Now you along this you just do the integration.
Sir, I am getting
And tell
2
me
pi
what-
I.
2 pi I.
2 pi I. I am getting 2 pi I.
2 pi I. So who said 1?
Sir, I am getting 1. I don't know. I think I need to check it.
No, you check it. Take your time because we have some time. Do it. I'll
2
show
pi
you.
I.
Yeah, 2 pi I is the correct answer, of course. I'll show you the solution, but just check your calculation. Since you are getting 1, that's not correct. We'll come back to this integration again and again, and other examples we will do. But today I'll stop with this example actually because
Yes, sir, it is 2 pi I.
yeah, 2 pi. I could not type more than this actually. Typing is taking so much time. Although I have all my notes typed, but this slides, it's bigger font. It's easier for you to follow. If I just share the PDF file which I have, the font is smaller. Do you think it is okay if I share the PDF file with you here on the screen and then just discuss, or I just prepare these slides? If I share the screen, I can cover a little bit more actually. And if I just type the slides, typing the slides take a lot of my time. Taking a lot
Sir,
of
we
my
can do
What
from
is
the
your-
PDF. Like if you go slowly, we can do from the PDF.
I'll go slowly. Only thing is that can you read the PDF? If I share, I'll show you today, for example, and just let me know if you are able to read from the PDF. I mean, with a smaller font probably. Then I'll not type. I'll not take this pain to type all these things like this. Okay, because it's already typed. Only thing is that I'm preparing the slides just for your convenience. Anyway, tell you. So let me show you that. So this is as everybody told, that this is the path along which we are doing the integration. Okay, so this is our parameterized curve. So it's a circle of radius r centered about the origin. So fz t is 1 over I exponential minus I 2 pi t, and z dot t is 2 pi I r exponential I 2 pi t. So integration c fz dz is essentially it's 0 to 1. T goes from 0 to 1. 2 pi I r e to the power 2 pi I t divided by 2 pi I t. So that gives me 2 pi r. Okay, and this is a very important integration. We will come to this integration again and again later on. But this was just simple examples of the line integral concept that we introduced today. Okay. So next day we will discuss about analytic functions, its properties, the integration of analytic functions and path independence and all the other examples, etc. on Friday. So at 2 p.m. So let me just stop here today. And we will go to more involved discussion later on these things on Friday. So let me see how far we can go. So I'll stop here today, but let me just show you that that the PDF file, if I share, whether you are able to, for example, let me just check this. So, for example,
Sir, there is an option to zoom, right?
can you see these whatever is written?
Yes, sir.
Zoom. Let me see.
Yes, sir. +1. Yeah.
This way I have to just slide. No?
Uh-huh.
This is okay.
Sir, even a people.
So it's fine, sir. And you can adjust the numbers of zoom yourself if it's a problem.
Yeah, it is fine, sir.
This is
Like,
fine?
yeah, you can adjust the numbers of zoom to make it perfect.
Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, so then it's perfectly all. Then I can cover a little bit more actually because I'm yeah. So I still have 10 minutes time. But many times I have taken extra time, so this is I'm adjusting now. So next day I'll then start directly from this PDF files. Okay, I'll not prepare the slides anymore. And whatever I taught today, I'll send the lecture notes after the class, and or along with this discussion of complex powers. Okay, it's a complex power. It's a short discussion that I have. Go through it, but it's very important. If you have not done it rigorously earlier, just go through these things, solve all the examples, because it's quite involved and a bit tricky also sometimes. And this will be used in your complex integration many times. So I think that is important. I did not do it here, but I'll send you the notes and along with some examples. By the way, are you solving this home assignment problem that I gave on limits and other things? Have you completed that? Did you go through